What's up, everybody? Welcome into yet another edition of the Baseline Jumper podcast. However, this isn't just any normal edition because tonight we are doing a fantasy football preview podcast. That's right, folks. For those of you who don't know me, and if you're listening to this, chances are you do, my name's Jason Goldstein. I'm joined, as always, by my buddy, Ben McDonald. Ben, football season is upon us. Our basketball hats are off tonight. How the heck are you?
I am doing very well, my friend, and I'm ready to talk some fantasy football, some strategy, some sleepers, some potential busts, our favorite guys. There's much to discuss. But how are you, my friend?
I'm well. I'm actually in the middle of a fantasy football draft right now, a 14-teamer, so we're about halfway through. It started about a half an hour before we started recording, so I'm just trying to draft and talk at the same time. So if I sound distracted, Ben will just have to carry the show and pick up the slack as he usually does. But yes, so far, liking my team. We are in the 7th round of a 15-team draft, so I am working here. But why don't you start us off, Ben? I mean, the quarterback position obviously is the first place we go here.
Well, yeah, of course. The big news that just came out that has a huge effect on fantasy football. O.J. Simpson came out and was upset at Andrew Luck for retiring right as he drafted him in his fantasy football league. And there's probably some other folks that are as well. Me personally, I'm just sad to see the guy go. One of the great gentlemen of the National Football League. Just such a good guy, such a smart guy. Those videos of him complimenting guys as they sacked him are awesome. I just such a good guy, phenomenal quarterback. Still a little bit salty over the way that he used to just shred my beloved Miami Dolphins. And now deciding to retire. Obviously, he's going to really affect the way that we're looking at the QB market. But I think the question here, Jason, is a year after Patrick Mahomes led a lot of teams to fantasy gold, can can we really pick a QB early, or do we need to be streaming quarterbacks, taking them later in the draft?
Well, the league I'm in right now, Patrick Mahomes went in the 2nd round, which I don't fully understand, but I think you can stream a quarterback. I'm actually waiting right now on a quarterback. I'm up in round 7. Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz are all here. I'm going to wait, and Ben is going to talk because I have 33 seconds to make a pick, and I love you, Andrew Luck.
So, I mean, ultimately, I think that really this year you have to be very careful with quarterback. You can't go too early. It's really, really important to wait on your quarterback. If you take a guy early, I don't think you're getting dramatic value. And moreover, I just think there's some guys much later in the draft who are just as good. And I mean, if you wait a little bit longer, I mean, there are some high guys who I think are worthy of the pick. I think with where Aaron Rodgers is getting drafted, he's a really nice pick. I think Baker Mayfield could have just an absolutely tremendous season. So I think those guys are really guys who might be worthy of their draft position because they're so low. But then you look and you see all these other guys who are later. I mean, the thing that's crazy with Mayfield to me is how late he is. He's kind of a sleeper. I mean, a lot of people have Mahomes going around 40 or 50 and a guy like Mayfield going closer to 90. I mean, if he's going that late, you have to consider taking him that late in the draft. I mean, he has a chance to be the number one quarterback this year in terms of scoring. Adding Odell Beckham, I mean, I think that's a tremendous fit. They are going to be one of the better teams in the league in all likelihood. So I think that's a good value. But after those guys, I mean, I like him there. I think you wait on quarterback until much later because I think the 10th and 12th quarterback, guys like that, are just as good as the guys a little bit earlier.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. I actually ended up taking Austin Hooper. So I have 2 tight ends. I'm not going to have to worry about that position for a while. I have Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. But getting back to the quarterback position, look, we all know who the best ones in the league are. You have your Aaron Rodgers, your Patrick Mahomes, your Baker Mayfield, your Drew Breeses, your Jared Goffs. But I want to talk a little bit about potential breakout candidates. And I think there's nowhere further we can start than Lamar Jackson because Jackson is a guy that you're very high on, a guy that can run. He's shown some passing ability in his rookie year. And all 3 guys I have on this list right here are second-year players. And if you want to make an argument for Josh Rosen, who is on your beloved Miami Dolphins. But what do you think of Lamar Jackson, Ben, and why are you so high on him?
So first of all, don't do yourself a favor. Do not draft Josh Rosen or anyone on the Dolphins this year. They're going to have one of the worst offensive lines in football, probably one of the worst offensive lines in the last 5 years. do not draft anyone there. If you want to take a receiver, take a shot on maybe Mike Gesicki, the tight end. If you want to take a shot on one of those two receivers, whether it's Wilson, Parker, or Stills, go for it. But you're probably not going to wring a lot of value out of the Dolphins this year. I don't think they're great. They're going to be a very good team, especially on offense. But Lamar Jackson, one of the best values to me in all of fantasy football. I would take him at least 30 spots ahead of where he's usually getting drafted. I would take him multiple rounds ahead. I think if you look for a number of reasons, he has tremendous value. The first is that fantasy football overwhelmingly values rushing and receiving statistics over passing statistics. So the average points for a rushing or receiving touchdown is 6. For passing touchdowns, it's usually 4. You have to have 25 yards passing for a point. You only need to have 10 for rushing. In short, if you have a guy who's running the ball well, getting touchdowns that way, he's worth a lot. Moreover, Jason, if you look at last year, Lamar Jackson did not start many games. He started against the Bengals in November. And if you look at his rushing last year, with only starting 7 games in the regular season, Jason, he still had almost 150 attempts rushing. If you translate that and you say he's going to have over 200 attempts, which I don't know that he will, but let's say he gets in that realm. I mean, last year he was able to rack up 700 yards. I think conservatively you peg him for 800 yards. Good chance he gets you 8-10 touchdowns there. That 800 yards translates to approximately 2,000 yards passing when you take the conversion. So if he throws for 3,000 yards, which is not a ton, I mean, that's a pretty reasonable amount. He runs for 800. He gets 8 or 10 rushing touchdowns. He throws 20 touchdowns. That's going to be one of the top 10 QBs in the whole fantasy football. So I think he's a really good value. He's going really, really late. Most places have him in the 110s, 120s. So if you can get him anywhere near there, I think you got to.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm up in 2 picks, and I need another receiver. So then I'm going to throw a couple names out to you that are still available. You have Larry Fitzgerald, who will never retire, Marvin Jones. You have Dante Moncrief and Dante Pettis. So I'm leaning towards Pettis. You like any of those guys?
Yeah, on the receiver front, I think Pettis is a really nice sleeper. Dante Moncrief is good as well if he wins the battle for the
With
Steelers
Brissett,
number 2.
with yeah, well, with him and Juju Smith-Schuster, I think. Wow, another quarterback went. Kyler Murray. I'm getting a quarterback so late. I just got to stock up points here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you have any other thoughts on Lamar Jackson? Because there are a couple of guys on this list that I'm also very high on.
Nothing else on Lamar Jackson. I just think one of the things people need to remember is that fantasy football is not real football. I don't think that Lamar Jackson is one of the top 10 or top 5 quarterbacks, but there's a very good chance with the way that most leagues do scoring that Lamar Jackson will be a top 5 or top 10 quarterback this year. So don't wait too long to get him because he could really win you a league. I mean, for quarterbacks, I think Lamar Jackson is probably the most likely guy to win you your league based on his upside as far as a quarterback goes.
No question, because the other two guys on this list, at least for me, are also second-year players. So you have Sam Darnold of the Jets, who has looked extremely improved in the offseason. His accuracy's there. He's throwing passes into all sorts of tight windows, doing a fantastic job. And then Josh Allen, his AFC East counterpart with the Bills. I know the Bills don't have as many weapons. They signed a ton of receivers, John Brown, Cole Beasley. But I just think Darnold with the Jets is ready to take that next step. He's got Le'Veon Bell as the ultimate security blanket, albeit he's going to be extremely rusty. He went 6th overall, Ben, in the draft that I'm in tonight. It's insane. But I think Darnold's in for a huge leap, and Allen's not too far behind him. What do you think of those guys?
I think they're solid. The guy I'd really throw on this list that I mentioned is Baker Mayfield. I think Baker Mayfield, bold prediction here, I think he will become the fantasy quarterback number 1 this year. I think he will lead fantasy QBs in scoring. I think between Beckham, Landry, David Njoku, Nick Chubb, that offense is going to be dynamic. And we haven't even mentioned their third receiver, Rashard Higgins, who had a really nice breakout campaign last year. I think that Mayfield passes for high 4,000s, maybe even low 5,000 yards. I think he'll probably be somewhere in that 4,600 or so yards. I think he's going to be an absolute monster. He's also a guy who can get some yards on the ground. So, I mean, don't sleep on the fact that he's going to get you a couple rushing yards. So if he gets you a couple rushing yards, a couple rushing TDs over the course of the season, that's going to be really, really valuable. So I think overall he probably adds in probably a couple hundred rushing yards, maybe a couple rushing TDs to all what he's going to do in the passing game. So I think if you're looking for a breakout guy, I think he's your best bet. I would say that he's likely going to finish. I would be very confident he'll finish in the top 3 for scoring of quarterbacks this year.
Well, Mayfield, I think, is already on people's radar. So I'm talking about breakout candidates that not the common NFL fan is talking about. So Mayfield's definitely on everyone's radar. You have Jackson, you have Darnold, you have Allen, and I think those guys are all in for huge jumps in their second year in the league, following the likes of Jared Goff and Carson Wentz and Mitchell Trubisky, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes. So it's definitely a new era for NFL quarterbacks. But I want to move on to the bust because I think there are a couple of guys, especially from a fantasy perspective, where they are not in for good years. You got Jameis Winston, who's probably on his last legs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. One more bad year, they might cut bait. Kirk Cousins in year 2 of that mega deal he signed with the Vikings last offseason. And then this name's a bit of a shocker to see on a list with it says potential bust, but Cam Newton of the Panthers, he's banged up now. Ron Rivera says he's going to play week 1, but if I'm a fantasy football player and I'm trying to win a league, I'm not drafting any of those 3 guys.
Yeah, the guy I'm going to throw on that list, there's a couple guys I would toss in here. One is Tom Brady. I really don't like Brady this year. I would try to avoid drafting him, and the reason is while I think he has great passing weapons, the main kind of point values you're going to get from your quarterbacks are not from the yards, but from the touchdowns. Because of the way that we fantasy football leagues typically score, you have to rack up a whole lot of yards to really equal the touchdown production. And I think when you look at what the Patriots have been doing in the preseason, what they've been talking about, when they get near the goal line, they are going to be running the ball. Without Gronkowski, without some of those big receivers, I think you're going to really see them look to run the ball near the goal line. And I think that's going to take away a lot of value for Brady. So he's a guy for me that I'd be a little careful on drafting just because I just don't think that the, the upside is really there for him. I completely agree on Newton. I think he's going to be kind of a stay away for me. The only other guy that jumps to mind that I'm interested in are guys like Matt Ryan, guys like Matthew Stafford, guys like Russell Wilson, where we just don't know if they're going to live up to where they're getting drafted. Those are guys that I'd be a little careful with as well, just because they've lost some weapons, and I'm just not sure they're going to be the same guys.
So I have a few of those names on my list, and I call this the old but consistent category. I have Brady in here, even though, the receiver situation in New England's a bit unsettling. You have N'Keal Harry, Demaryius Thomas, Josh Gordon, who just applied for reinstatement. But I have Brady, I have Rivers, Matthew Stafford, and Andy Dalton, all guys that are veterans, were top fantasy quarterbacks at one point or another. But I think any of these guys have the chance to get it done. The only one that concerns me, though, is Dalton, because A.J. Green's expected to be out for a while.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and those are solid picks. But let's get on to the money makers, the league winners, and that's the running back position. So running backs are pretty much where you're going to win or lose your league. And when it comes to the first round guys, Jason, I know there's a couple guys who are potential first round picks who you're not a big fan of right now.
No, and one of those guys I'm not a big fan of is Ezekiel Elliott. As of now, I'm drafting, so I'm going to get back to this point in a minute. I'm not taking a quarterback because Dak Prescott went. I had eyes on him. What do you think of these guys? You got Geronimo Allison, Cortland Sutton, Devin Singletary, Devin Funchess. Any of these sticking out for you? I mean, I'm in round 9. The Rams defense is there, but it's definitely way too early.
This is where I'd start looking at Lamar Jackson.
Well, Lamar Jackson's gone.
Oh, he's already gotten taken?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So
you don't have a quarterback either? Oof.
I am one of 2 teams without a quarterback.
Around there are the Tampa Bay running backs around?
Peyton
Barber, Ronald Jones. Darius Geis is nice around there.
Geis is gone. I have 10 seconds. Crap.
This is thrilling podcasting right here.
I'm taking the Rams defense. I know it's early, but I at least I have a good defense. I didn't want to take a panic pick.
Well, getting back to our discussion here at running back, Jason does not trust Zeke Elliott, and I don't blame him. I
forewarned everyone before the show that I'm going to be a bit distracted trying to do this draft while on the air, but that's the fun part about podcasting, especially when we